A small dusty shop, hidden among newer and shiny businesses, a relic of another era. A place where music was not only transmitted, but held in the hands. At the time she was alive. A hub for vinyl seekers, hip-hop lovers and collectors who knew the value of an album. But now he was fading away. The owner, a man who had spent his whole life surrounded by records, by sound, by history, was sitting behind the counter, looking at bills he couldn't pay, shelves full of albums that no one was buying anymore. I had seen it coming. He had fought to keep the doors open, to keep the music alive. But today, I was thinking about closing for the last time. Then the little bell over the door rang. And when he looked up, Snoop Dogg was standing in his tent. And what happened next? No one saw it coming. The store had been there longer than most of the businesses on the block. It had survived fads, recessions, the era when CDs replaced vinyl, and even when digital streaming made owning music almost unnecessary. But surviving was no longer enough. Why now? Now the store was empty. The owner, an old-school vinyl lover named Reggie, was sitting behind the counter, flipping through the same pile of unpaid bills he'd been staring at for weeks. He had fought 4 years to keep this place alive, but the struggle was wearing him down. The rent was overdue. Sales had dropped to almost nothing. And today I was ready to admit defeat. Until the little bell over the door jingled. And when he looked up, he didn't just see a customer. He saw Snoop Dogg. The moment Snoop Dogg walked in, it felt like a trip to the past. The air smelled like old vinyl, faded posters covered the walls, and the wooden floor creaked under his sneakers, just like the record stores he used to visit when he was a kid. But this was not the same. Because back then, these places were full of life. People rummaging through the boxes, debating which album was the best, Jays looking for the perfect sample. Guys saving their money just to buy a new tape or CD. Now, the only sound in the store was the hum of a ceiling fan and the faint crackle of an old radio playing in the background. No customers. No emotion. Just a place that had been left behind by time. And behind the counter, a man who seemed to have been left behind with him. Reggie had owned this store for over 30 years. He had seen the rise of hip-hop, he had seen legends move from the underground to the mainstream. He had seen children grow up in his store, spending hours discovering music that changed their lives. I had lived through the golden era of vinyl, the rise of the cassette, the arrival of CDs, but streaming had destroyed everything. The same people who used to line up outside his store for new releases, now they would just pull out their phones, tap on a screen, and have any song they wanted instantly. And so, all of a sudden, his tent was no longer needed. Now only it existed. And every day, it became a little harder to keep the doors open. Reggie didn't need to say a word. Snook could see it all on his face. The tired look in her eyes, the way her hands rested on the counter as if holding more than her own weight. The stack of unopened mail by the cash register, mostly overdue bills. "Damn it, or gee," Snoop said, scanning the empty store. "I haven't seen a record store this quiet since, man, I don't even know." Reggie sighed, shaking his head. "It's not like it used to be, nephew. There used to be a line outside that door every Friday. Now, if I have more than 3 clients a day, I'm lucky. I didn't need to say it. Snoop already knew what was coming. I'm thinking maybe it's time to close up shop. Snoop did not immediately respond. He didn't say the typical, "Man, you can't do that." He didn't try to give her false hopes. He just let the words settle in. Because he knew it. I knew how much Reggie had fought to keep this place alive, how much he had tried to adapt, how much he loved this store. But love didn't pay the rent. And now, Reggie was a man watching the end of a dream. And Snoop wasn't going to let that happen. Snoop took a look around. To the rows of untouched records. To the classic albums that had shaped his life. To the empty space where the customers should be. And then, he came up with an idea. A crazy idea. The kind of idea that could change everything. He pulled out his phone, turned on Instagram Lad, and pointed the camera directly at Reggie. "Hey world, listen up," Snoop said, his voice filling the silent tent. "Do you see this man here? This is Reggie. He's been at the foot of the gun, keeping the culture alive, running this record store since before half of you knew what hip-hop was." Reggie blinked. "What are you doing, Snoop?" Snoop smiled. "I'm saving your damn store, that's what I'm doing." Snoop walked down the steps, showing off the records, mentioning classics, holding up albums that had shaped the industry. They say they love music, right? They say they are real fans. So why is this place empty? The comments started to explode instantly. "Damn, is that store still open? I used to go there all the time. Where is this? I'm on my way there today." And so, all of a sudden, Reggie's store stopped being invisible. It became a trend. The next morning, everything had changed. The parking lot. Full. The store? Crowded. The cash register. Playing nonstop. Customers came from all over, old-school vinyl collectors, young people who were just starting to get into music. People who had never set foot in a record store before, but wanted to be a part of something real. And in the middle of all that, Reggie, shaking his head, smiling for the first time in years. "Man, this is crazy." Snoop smiled. "No, OG. This is just the beginning." Snoop didn't just want to save the store for one day. He wanted to make sure that I would never have problems again. So he called some friends. Big names. Legends. And in a matter of weeks, the store stopped being just a store, it became an experience. Live presentations. Exclusive album signings. Special vinyl releases that were only sold at Reggie's store. And before anyone noticed, the place wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. One evening after closing, Reggie sat behind the counter, counting bills, but not overdue accounts, but real earnings. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about the rent. I wasn't thinking about closing. He did not wonder if he had made a mistake by clinging to the past. Why now? Now, the past had come back stronger than ever. And I wasn't going anywhere. Snoop walked the aisles one last time, nodding as he saw people rummaging through records, debating about albums, living the same culture that had shaped him. Reggie watched him, shaking his head. "You really made it, brother." Snoop smiled mischievously. "No, oh yeah. We made it." And as I was walking out, past the neon sign that said open, past the customers, past the music that kept playing. One thing became clear. This store was not only alive. She was legendary. Reggie's record store wasn't just 4 walls and a few dusty shelves. It was a time capsule. It was the kind of place where the walls whispered history, where every album told a story, where the air itself carried the energy of 1,000 rhythms, rhymes, and melodies that had passed through there over the years. It had been more than a store, it had been a meeting point, a cultural center. A school for anyone who wanted to understand music beyond what was on the charts. But now it was just a silent, forgotten relic of an era that seemed to have been erased by the convenience of a streaming play button. And that was the real tragedy. There was a time when this store was alive. The 80s and 90s. That was the golden era. Back in those days, guys would camp all night just to be the first to have a new pitch. The rappers and producers would spend hours rummaging through the boxes, looking for that perfect sample that no one else had used yet. The Jays were performing impromptu battles right in the store, the turntables were spinning, the crowd was cheering. The energy was bouncing off the walls. But all that, he had vanished. And now, the only sound inside the store was the soft hum of an old radio, playing a song that no one was there to hear. Reggie had poured his life into this place. But passion didn't pay the rent. And month after month, the bills kept piling up. The services. The suppliers. The rent, which seemed to go up every year, although sales were only going down. Reggie had struggled. He tried everything. He started selling rare records online. He tried to organize small events in the store. He even tried to turn half of the store into a cafe just to attract people. But nothing worked. Because no matter what I did, I was fighting a battle against time. And the weather. He was winning. Reggie could still remember the faces of his regulars. The ones that used to come by every week, the ones that discussed albums, the ones that brought their kids to teach them about real music. But those faces, they didn't come back anymore. Some had moved away. Some changed the vinyl for the convenience. Some people just stopped buying music. And the new generation, they didn't even know this place existed. Because for them, music was not something to be bought. It was just something that was playing in the background while they were swiping on their phones. Reggie had one last chance. A final settlement. He had marked everything down, hoping that maybe, just maybe, some collectors would stop by and save him from having too close for good. But the sale had started like this 2 weeks later. And the shelves? They were still full. It wasn't working. And now, as he sat behind the counter, looking at the numbers, looking at the bills, looking at the reality that he had been trying to ignore for months, he knew what he had to do. It was time to close. Forever. And then, the little bell over the door rang. Reggie hardly looked up. Because I had stopped waiting for customers. Because the sound of that little bell had ceased to mean anything. But when he finally looked towards the entrance, he froze. Because there, in the middle of his dying record store, flipping through old vinyl like it's 1995 all over again, there was Snoop Dogg. Reggie blinked, wondering for a second if he was dreaming. Why? What were the odds? What were the chances that, on the day you were ready to close for good, one of the greatest legends in hip-hop history would walk through your doors? And the way Snoop was looking around, I wasn't just poking around. I was absorbing everything. The posters, the boxes, the record players that hadn't been used in years. And when he finally walked up to the counter, still holding an old vinyl in his hand, he didn't even have to ask. I already knew that. Damn it, OG. Snoop said, shaking his head. What happened? Reggie let out a long sigh. Man, you know what happened. Snoop nodded, turning the puck over in his hands. Yes, I knew that. Streaming has arrived. Convenience has arrived. The time has come. But still, to see him like this, to see him with his own eyes, to see a place like this, a place that had once been the heart of culture, on the verge of closure. It didn't sit well with him. And Snoop. Snoop wasn't one to just turn around and walk away. Snoop could have taken out his wallet, given Reggie a check, saved the store with a few extra zeros. But that was not the solution. Because this wasn't about money. It was about making people care again. So instead, Snoop pulled out his phone. He opened Instagram. And before Reggie could even ask what was going on, Snoop pressed record. Me, what's the matter? Do you see this here? He turned the camera, showing the store, showing Reggie, showing the rows of vinyl collecting dust. This right here, this is where the culture lives. But you guys have been ignoring her. And now, he's dying. Unless we do something about it. Reggie blinked. Snoop, what the hell are you doing? Snoop smiled. I'm gonna bring back your customers, OG. By the time Snoop finished recording, the comments were already exploding. People were tagging their friends, asking for the address, talking about how they used to come here when they were kids, how they couldn't believe the store still existed, how they were going to go that very day. And in an hour, the first customer came in, then another one, then another one. And so, all of a sudden, the record store that was about to close for good, he had a second chance. And Snoop Dogg. I was just getting started. Snoop didn't even hesitate. He picked up his phone, pressed record, and started talking, not like a celebrity promoting a product, not like someone reading a script, but like a man who had just walked into a place that mattered. Do you see this here? You see this place, he said, turning the camera so people could see everything. The shelves full of vinyl, the faded posters of hip-hop legends, the record player in the corner that hadn't been used in years. This is not just a store. This is history. This is where music used to live. And now, man, look around, this place is empty. He pointed the camera at Reggie, who was standing behind the counter, arms folded, a half-smile on her face, part gratitude, part disbelief, part wondering what the hell was about to happen. Ben, you guys say you love hip-hop, you love vinyl, you love culture, but where are you? Because my man Reggie here. He has kept this alive for 30 years. And now, it's about to close because no one comes anymore. He let the words settle in. He let the silence spread. Then, with that classic Snoop smile, he said, let's change that. Right now? And with a single tap, the post went viral. The video reached thousands of views in minutes. Then hundreds of thousands. And then, it exploded. The comments section was flooded. Wait, I used to go there when I was a kid. Is that store still open? Damn, this place was legendary. I thought it closed years ago. I'm on my way there today. Where is it left? And so, all of a sudden, Reggie's shop was no longer forgotten. She was alive. Within hours, the video had been shared by other artists, DJs, producers, record collectors, who had spent their life searching for rare vinyls, who knew what a place like this meant. A radio station picked him up. Then a hip-hop blog. Then a national news outlet. And before Reggie could even process what was going on, the whole country was talking about his shop. And not just talking. People were coming. The next morning, Reggie was behind the counter, rubbing his eyes, wondering if he was still dreaming. Because the store that had been empty for months. Now I had a line outside the door. Customers were coming in droves, veterans looking for classics, young people wanting to have their first vinyl. Collectors looking for hidden gems, people who didn't even own a record player but wanted to be part of the movement. And in the middle of all that, Reggie shaking his head, a smile spreading across his face. "This is crazy, man," he muttered, registering another sale. But madness. The madness was just the beginning. Snoop didn't just bring in clients. He brought the culture. In less than a week, hip-hop legends began to arrive. Old-school J's stopped by to rummage through the vinyls. Rappers who had built their careers with samples taken from stores like this came to support. Even new artists, those raised in the digital age, came just to experience what it was like to hold music in their hands. And suddenly, Reggie's store wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. Reggie had never cared about fame. But now, everyone wanted to talk to him. Interviews, articles, podcast, everyone wanted to know how a decaying record store went from being about to close to being one of the most talked about places in music. And every time they asked him, Reggie would just shrug his shoulders and say the same thing. "Man, Snoop Dogg walked into my store, pressed record, and changed my life." A few weeks later, Snoop had another idea. "Yo, Reggie, have you ever had a live show here?" Reggie laughed. "Man, this is not a concert hall." Snoop just smiled. "Now it is." And that night, the store was transformed. The shelves were pushed back. Horns were brought in. And before anyone noticed, the first live concert at Reggie's store was happening right in the middle of the aisles. People crowded in place, vinyl spinning, bass rattling the walls. It felt like the old days again. And for the first time in years, Reggie wasn't thinking about closing. I was thinking about what would come next. It didn't stop with a viral post. Not even with a good sales week. Not even with a concert. Because now, the store had become a movement. It was more than just a store, it was a place where hip-hop, R&B, jazz, funk, soul and everything else could live forever. A place where young people could learn about the history of music. A place where vinyl wasn't just a thing of the past, it was the basis of something timeless. And people weren't just coming to buy records anymore. They were coming to experience something real. Reggie had spent years thinking about the ending. Thinking about what I would do if the store closed. Thinking about how she would pack up her life's work, how she would walk away from something that had been more than a job, had been her purpose. But now I didn't have to. Because his store wasn't just open. He was thriving. And for the first time in years, when was I thinking about the future? I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Snoop didn't just save a store. It didn't just help an old friend. It didn't just go viral. He brought something back. He reminded people that music is not just files on a phone. That hip-hop isn't just about streaming numbers and chart positions. That some things, the real things, cannot be replaced. And as he stood outside the store, watching the line of customers, watching Reggie laughing behind the counter, watching the music come back to life, he nodded to himself and smiled. Yes, he murmured. That's how it's done. And so, all of a sudden, the past had a future again. For years, Reggie thought about closing. He thought about the closing of business sign that he would have to hang in the window. He thought about how he would have to pack the records, put the memories in boxes, and get away from the store that had been his life. But now I wasn't thinking about closing. Now, I was thinking about how to handle all the people who were arriving en masse. Because from the day Snoop Dogg walked through that door, his store went from being an empty relic to becoming a movement. And now, nothing was going to stop him. It started as a drip. A few customers here and there. People who saw the video of Snoop and wanted to know the place. Then the drip turned into a torrent. Then the torrent turned into a wave. And then the wave turned into something even bigger. People no longer came just to look around. They were coming to buy. Vinyl sales exploded. Rare records that had been gathering dust for years sold out in a matter of hours. And the best of all, they didn't just buy, they talked. They were talking about the albums, the samples, the hidden gems. They talked about music the way people used to before everything went digital. They were talking about why a place like this needed to exist. And Reggie? I was selling faster than I could restock. One afternoon, while Reggie was behind the counter, checking in for another purchase, with a line stretching all the way to the door, the front doorbell rang. And when did he look up? Snoop Dogg was standing there again. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time, he had brought company. A group of artists, producers and J's, some old-school legends, some rising stars. People who understood exactly what a place like this meant. And in that moment, Requi knew. This wasn't just a store anymore. It was a movement. That night, Snoop had an idea. We have to do something special, oh. Gee, said, looking around the store. This place deserves more than just sales. It deserves a celebration. Reggie raised an eyebrow. What kind of celebration are we talking about? Snoop smiled. We are going to do the event in the biggest store this city has ever seen. And before Reggie could even answer, Snoop was already on the phone. The news spread faster than the fire. A pop-up concert. In a record store. With Snoop Dogg. And some of the biggest names in hip-hop history. The city had never seen anything like it. When the night of the event arrived, the line was going all the way around the block. People weren't just waiting to see Snoop. They were waiting to experience something real. And when did the doors open? The power was electric. The turntables were turning. The MCs were taking the microphone. The bass rattled the shelves, shaking the dust off records that had been untouched for years. And for the first time in decades, the store felt like a movement again. The legends acted. The new artists made their debut. The fans were rapping along to the classics. And in the middle of all that, Reggie was behind the counter, shaking his head, grinning from ear to ear. Because this wasn't just a good night. This was history. The next morning, something happened that even Snoop didn't expect. A reporter from a major media called. Then another one. Then another one. Everyone wanted to know the story. How did an almost forgotten record store go from being on the verge of closure to being one of the most talked about places in music? And so, all of a sudden, Reggie's store wasn't just a business anymore. He was a cultural icon. For years, no one cared about record stores. No one wanted to invest in vinyl. No one thought these places had a future. But now, the same people who once ignored Reggie's store were lining up to be a part of it. The sponsors wanted to collaborate. Brands wanted to organize events. The artists wanted to release exclusive vinyls only available in Reggie's store. And for the first time in his life, Reggie wasn't worried about the rent anymore. I was thinking about expanding. A few weeks after the event, Snoop called Reggie. "OG. Have you ever thought about opening a second store?" Reggie laughed. "Man, you're crazy. I can hardly believe I still have this one." But Snoop wasn't kidding. "No, I'm serious. This is not just a store anymore. It's a movement. And the movements, they grow up." And that's when Reggie realized Snoop wasn't just saving his business. I was building something bigger. Something that couldn't be stopped. Something that would outlive both of them. There was a time when Reggie thought about closing. He thought about leaving. He thought about closing the door for the last time. But now he had more than just a business. He had a legacy. And whatever happens next, that store wasn't going anywhere. Because hip-hop wasn't just music. It was history. And now, thanks to Snoop Dogg, I had a home. Forever. Reggie's store wasn't just a record store anymore. It was a destination. People were traveling from everywhere just to get in, to rummage through the vinyl, to be a part of something real. Artists began to release exclusive vinyls, only available in the Reggie store. Big-name J's were performing live sets in the aisles, spinning records on the same turntables that had once been gathering dust. Collectors, hip-hop lovers, and even young people who had never owned a vinyl before came, wanting to experience the music the way it should be heard. And the craziest part, he never stopped. Because this was not just a fad. This was history being reborn. For years, Reggie had been preparing for the worst. She had spent so much time preparing for the day when she would have to close the doors for good, that it took her a while to realize that she didn't have to do it anymore. One night, while the store was closing, he stood in the middle of the store, surrounded by shelves that were not empty. Of a business that was not dying, of a future that was no longer uncertain. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to believe it. He had won. Not only against time. Not just for streaming. But against the idea that places like this no longer mattered. Because they did matter. And now, thanks to Snoop, everyone knew about it. Snoop Dogg didn't just save a store. He didn't just bring back the vinyl. It reminded people of something they had forgotten. That music is not just something that is streamed online. It is something that is felt. It's something you hold in your hands. It's something that endures. And as long as people kept coming, shopping, talking about what this store meant, I would never disappear again. Because now, Reggie's store wasn't just a business. It was part of the history of hip-hop. Forever.